collaboration with the Cyprus Mail, this is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
Coming up on this week's programme, we could soon have legislation that determines how we dispose of unwanted or unused pharmaceuticals.
In every pharmacy there would be a small bin where you dispose your unwanted pharmaceuticals.
And a centre of excellence at the European University looks at health and safety on the roads and in the workplace. They've briefed the police, but it seems that we still have quite a long way to go.
Unfortunately, most of the cases we see very insignificant fines and punishment for serious events and even for fatal accidents and crashes.
We've talked so many times about disposal, proper waste disposal in Cyprus. We lag behind in so many areas, but one notable area which hasn't yet been legislated for is the disposal of pharmaceuticals. What do you do when you've finished your course of drugs but there's a few left over, or it's gone out of date? A lot of people pour them down the toilet or the sink, and that is not a good idea, as I'm sure my next guest will tell us. He is the head of the Green Party in Cyprus, Bambos Theobemptou. Bambos, this is something that I think we do dispose of hospital waste according to certain laws, but just the average person's medicine cabinet, there's no control over that at all, is there?
No, it's not, and it is one of the wastes that the European Commission is expecting us to regulate. I was pushing for this during the years that I was a Commissioner for the Environment from 2006 to 2012. So I was very glad when I saw this coming to the Environment Committee in Parliament and it was voted, because it took so many years to actually get this done.
Now, you say it was voted, but what actually was voted for?
Okay, what is going to happen with medicines is exactly the same thing that is happening, for instance, with packaging or paper recycling or electronic devices, batteries, etc. What this means is that whoever manufactures or imports pharmaceuticals in Cyprus, they have the responsibility to collect back all the remains of the pharmaceuticals. So what they're going to do is they're going to form a non-profit organization under what is the directive calling extended producer responsibility. And this company will actually hold the talks with various pharmacies that we have throughout the island. They will discuss and close the deals with the companies that will actually go around and collect from the bins in the pharmacies all the waste pharmaceuticals. And they will close the deal with all the companies that will actually accept those to destroy them.
How?
The idea is that what it mentions in the law is that in every pharmacy there would be a small bin where you dispose your unwanted pharmaceuticals. And the law says also that if, for instance, you followed chemotherapy and you no longer need the medicines for some reason, those you return to the place where they gave you these pharmaceuticals, because sometimes they contain their drugs, etc.
So if I understand correctly, the bins that will be placed eventually in pharmacies will not be the place to put certain types of drugs.
Yes, when they give you, for instance, if anyone is doing chemotherapy, they give you all these medicines to manage all the side effects of the chemotherapy, and you don't need them on anymore, or they expire, you return them back to that place. And I say this is important because there are medicine in there that is considered a drug, like for instance morphine. So you have to be careful with that.
All right, it does sound as if this is going to be very complicated for Joe Public. Why can't we just all put whatever pharmaceuticals we have in the disposal bin, and this NGO that you're talking about, it's got to, anyway, I presume, sort through the stuff in order to dispose of it, so we could separate out there.
Okay, the idea is that if whoever gave you the medicines, either a hospital or whether you went there and they ask you to return it back, you return it back. If they don't say anything, you dispose everything in the bin. But what we ask people is that if you think, for instance, that you bought any pills, you don't take the paper coverage, the paper packaging together with the medicine. The paper packaging will go to paper recycling, the recycling, and the actual container of the medicine, either the bottle with, for instance, cough syrup, for instance, it goes with the bottle in the bin, but you remove the outside paper packaging, you put it into paper recycling.
Right, which begs the question, when the bins are emptied by this NGO or whatever it is, they presumably have to empty out the contents of the bottles so that they can recycle the glass.
The stage that is the collection stage, I doubt whether they would be doing this, but there are other ways to break up the materials, for instance, and you can put them into a mill and then destroy them. There are ways to process it when it gets to the processing factory. The collecting would be done by just emptying the bins, that's all.
Yes, but the NGO will surely have, further down the road, the responsibility for how this material is disposed of.
Of course, yes. But I don't see anybody doing any actual work of sorting or anything else at the point of collection.
No. Once it's been collected, Bambos, I'm saying, then they have to take it somewhere. Where are they going to take it, and what facilities are needed where they take it in order to separate out the dangerous things? And again, how will it be disposed of? Is it going to be burned, buried, what?
This is up to the companies to actually do the deals with the processing plant. For instance, there are at this moment processing plants that will actually nutrify everything. They use chemical reactions, etc., so that you destroy all chemical content in it. It depends on what deal they do, but all I'm saying is that they still make a deal, but whatever the process they decide to do and the disposal needs to be approved by the Department for the Environment.
And I presume by the Ministry of Health to make sure that they've got their plans right. We've seen before in certain places in Cyprus that the unregulated or not properly thought out granting of licences for waste disposal comes back and bites us.
Of course, yes. It's a huge problem now. But all this needs to be approved by the Department for the Environment, which is responsible for all sorts of waste disposal, whether we're talking about just simple domestic waste, whether we're talking about construction waste, batteries, electrical devices, or medicines in this case.
All right, I'm still not clear who is going to make the regulations that will determine how all of this hazardous waste could be properly disposed of and not end up, for example, in our water table.
What's going to happen is that the companies that will be formed by the importers and the manufacturers will make a proposal to the Department for the Environment and tell them this is how we're going to operate, this is how we're going to collect all these waste medicine, and this is how we're going to process them, and this is how we're going to dispose the final processed material. all this needs to be licensed. It won't be a regulation that will come to Parliament again. It will be licensed. Everything should be approved by the Department for the Environment, and this will be done according to the rules and regulations that we have in place for the protection of groundwater, air, the proper disposal of waste.
Do we have best practice that we can follow from any other European country?
There are many countries that actually do this for many years now. There are best practices, how to chemically process, whether you burn them, etc. So it's up to the organization to come up with one of the approved methods of handling these materials.
And who will check that they are doing what they say they're going to do? Because I recall in the past, and particularly at the beginning of the pandemic, and I'm sure you do, seeing piles and piles of medical rubbish and rapid tests and goodness knows what else just dumped somewhere.
Yeah, the responsibility lies with the Department for the Environment. The Ministry of Health is actually almost all of it out of the picture. What will now happen is that the authority that now manages hospitals, which is a different authority for the last few years, they have to deal with this, and they are going to. They also have to deal with their own waste. And what is happening up to now is that we have the responsibility for many years for all these clinics and hospitals, dentists, doctors' offices, etc. We have a separate collection and destruction of these materials. And I think what is going to happen is that since we have an approved method that is already working for years, that what they will follow for the household medicines, it will be exactly the same treatment. So once they collect it, I think it will go to the same places. Whether it will be a furnace or it will be a chemical destruction or by extreme temperatures, there are a number of techniques that they already use.
My last question to you, because you've just raised something, we always seem to have more than one organisation doing the same thing in Cyprus. If we've already got an organisation that is doing this with the waste from hospitals and clinics and doctors' surgeries, why don't we just ask them to also take responsibility for the bins that are going to be placed in pharmacies?
Okay, let's say you are in a doctor's office, they do an injection and there is blood or a minor operation. There you produce infected material, medical waste, that you need to process, but it's not a medical waste that was imported or manufactured in Cyprus by a company. This is the difference. So that is called medical waste because it's produced in every little clinic, hospital, dentist, etc. And we have a law about that, the medical waste. What is the difference between these is that there you produce the waste out of materials that are not regulated. For instance, cotton is not regulated, but you actually infect cotton. So it's a different story. If you look at medicines or if you look at, for instance, batteries, it's just somebody that imported batteries in Cyprus. That company is responsible to collect them back once the battery runs out. So this is the difference. Here we have producers and importers that they have the responsibility to take it back. This is what we do with everything that is put in the market and remains back as a waste.
So when is all of this going to come into force?
It's already voted, so we have to give them a few months to actually get together and get this organized. I actually have a meeting with companies because they have a lot of questions. What they need to do is step number one, do the NGOs. Step number two, get the organized and hire people to get this done. And we have to give them time to actually choose the bins, whether the bin would be inside or outside the pharmacy, do the deals with the people that run the pharmacies. And one thing that I think will happen is that they will all this will end up being managed by Green Dot, because Green Dot has the experience to run these things. So there might be the NGO will be done, but the company that will actually regulate all the trucks and everything else, I think will be managed by Green Dot that has this experience.
Well, let's hope that they empty them more regularly than all the other things they're responsible for. Wherever you go in Cyprus, a lot of the recycling bins are overflowing.
Yes, you have to be aware, though, that we changed the law about recycling, all types of recycling, all types of municipal waste. We have huge changes coming into force, and all this recycling and all the management of municipal waste will now be the responsibility of the local authority. And in addition to all the things that we regulate, like for instance batteries, electrical goods, etc., now for instance unused pharmaceuticals, what they are going to introduce, and we need to process separately, is organic waste from the kitchen waste. So the change, the planning of each authority should be done by the end of this year, and 1st of June it will come into force.
So why do we need Why do we need Green Dot if it's going to be organised by the municipalities from now on?
No, the municipalities will have the responsibility. Green Dot has the legal responsibility to actually execute all this. The municipality will look after Green Dot that is actually doing what it's doing in every city and village. This will be extended all over Cyprus.
Well, let's hope it doesn't take 4 or 5 years, is all I can say, Rambos. It's something that we should have been doing for years, if you ask me.
Of course.
But
yes,
at least maybe something's moving towards the proper disposal of unwanted pharmaceuticals. Let's hope so. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you very much for the opportunity.
This is the Cyprus News Digest with Rosie Haralambous.
A meeting was held at the European University Centre of Excellence in Risk and Decision Sciences, all about safety in our society. This happened yesterday, and joining us to tell us all about it is Iasonas Selekis. Iasonas, welcome back. And I know normally we talk about road safety, but this had a wider remit, I think. First of all, will you tell me a bit about this Centre of Excellence?
Sure, yes. CERIDIS, how we call it, is basically the research center of the European University Cyprus. So the research center is conducting research, consulting services. We coordinate and manage European projects with a huge number of partners that relate to fire research, risk management, risk assessment, risk communication, environmental issues, and we basically work with the European Commission and with the university in various projects. And of course, members of CERIDIS are professors, are university professors, and research associates like myself, that we have a team of 40 persons that work at the university to conduct this research in these various subjects.
Now, am I right in thinking that yesterday's meeting was primarily with the police force, and that you were looking at information processing and how it can make communication more effective? Explain that a little bit for us.
Yes. Yesterday's meeting was only for police members, and it's basically under the memorandum of cooperation we have signed with the Cyprus police. And the meeting was about communicating to the public and to local media the issues of road safety, labor accidents, road crashes. So we presented practices and guidelines that have been formed through the time, through science, about the proper way and the best way to present and to describe incidents that happen relating to labor accidents and road crashes. And we spend time with the police listening to what they do and what are their practices, and we presented what the rest of the world is doing. And I'm happy to say that some of the guidelines are already being implemented by the police. Some of them are not, but it's very important to note that the whole of the police force that is related to media, that are involved in interviews, they write the announcements, and they present on television and on radio shows. Were there yesterday, and we had a very nice conversation and a very nice workshop about road safety and labor accidents, and of course communication.
Now, labour accidents we haven't spoken about before, but I've covered it many times on the programme because we seem to have an awful lot of those. What is the problem?
What Seridis has been doing for the last 13 years is that there is a cooperation with the Labour Ministry. Seridis has conducted a research about labour accidents over the last 20 years. And it was presented last year to the ministry and to the media. And from that research, there were many results, and the statistical analysis, there were results that showed the specific type of incidents that are happening more often in Cyprus, which are the victims of these labor incidents, of the labor accidents. And this was presented end of 2022 to the ministry and to the media. And what this research is about is basically to help the labor department to focus their strategy and their actions to specific subjects for occupational safety and health, so that they are more efficient in reducing labor accidents. So the problem is, it's not easy to define one cause. There are many causes, and of course there are different causes of labor accidents throughout the sectors of the economy. So we have the construction, we have hotels, we have the people, the deliveries that they are having incidents on the roads. So it's very interesting research, and it has been presented, so it's accessible, and I think that it's now at a stage where the Labour Ministry and the department can use the statistics, can use the results of this research, and change culture, and can focus more to prevent accidents, and of course reduce the victims and the injuries through these accidents.
I want to talk particularly about the construction industry, because that seems to be the one that is constantly in the news with people falling off scaffolding or whatever. Now, I would suggest to you that one of the problems is that certainly until recently, I don't know if it's changing, the penalties for construction managers and developers are not really off-putting, are they, if somebody falls off a scaffolding and gets killed? And we have, I don't know, maybe you know the figures, many of those every year.
It's true that construction has the highest number of fatal labor accidents. And it's again, this is the case with falls, and it's also, this is the one that happens more often in Cyprus. And finding why and how this is happening, and following a deep investigation of what's going on, we go back and of course to check the solutions and the measures that need to be implemented to prevent accidents. And of course penalties are a very important tool to use and force, let's say, the companies to implement the safety measures that they are required by law to implement. But it's true that the safety culture, a positive safety culture, is not present in construction. And it's not only that it's missing from the companies, it's also missing from the workers. And what needs to be done is basically inform everyone and educate everyone from top to the bottom, so that this culture changes. And I agree with you that there needs to be a change to the way that the cases are dealt by the courts. And this is the same, we must say, with most of the cases with fatal road crashes. There was one very recent that we saw a 3-year penalty for a triple fatal accident. So if we look at it holistically, punishment is just one of the measures that needs to be assessed and implemented to prevent and to reduce accidents and road crashes.
Well, of course, prevention is so much better than punishing people after an event, but we are back to this idea that people have been getting off with very low fines. I mean, is the law actually there that would say, if as a construction person I sent my workers up tall buildings with scaffolding that did not meet the current safety requirements, that I could be charged with manslaughter, for example, because that's the sort of thing that would perhaps change people's perceptions?
To be honest, I'm not aware if this can be the case. I haven't seen this happening. I'm not aware of any case that the manslaughter was the charge, but this happened a couple of times for road crashes. So it's up to the police and it's up to the court to decide what would be the proper way to deal with this case. But the law gives some guidelines to the courts, and thus we see it's the way the court deals with each case is different. And we see, unfortunately, most of the cases, we see very insignificant fines and punishment for serious events and even for fatal accidents and crashes.
Yeah, I mean, it does definitely require some looking into. Now, before you go, I want to ask you as well briefly about an upcoming event at the Centre of Excellence in Risk and Decision Sciences, because that, I think, is happening towards the end of April, and it's about bringing together professionals from many countries who are first responders. So I suppose that's earthquakes, the civil defence and those sort of people who are involved in other types of dangerous situations.
This is the final conference of Respond Day project, which is a European project, the Horizon 2020 project, that Ceridis is coordinating. It's a big European project, and now it reaches its end, and it's the final conference that's happening in Cyprus. And partners that have been working in the project are coming to Cyprus to showcase the developed products and technologies and solutions for first responders. So the project developed and designed new solutions and technologies and products to make the work of first responders safer and more efficient.
And we know how important that is after the earthquakes we've had, don't we? I mean, I see something here that says that there will be use of robotics and augmented and virtual reality technologies. I'm wondering how those can help in these situations.
Through the project, we had 3 pilots that happened in Cyprus, in Greece, and in Valencia, where these technologies were used in pilots that happened for specific situation. And there was a fire scenario, there was an earthquake scenario, and in Valencia there was a crash with an oil spill scenario in the Valencia port. So first responders that took part in these pilots used these technologies to act on the specific situation, and we had the control center that took the data from the technologies they were using, and they were gathering everything together so that the coordination of the first responders and the way they performed was managed in a better way, in a more efficient way, and to make their work easier and safer, because the control center would know at each point in time where the first responder was, what was his health status, and that was the same about the victims that were located and saved. And of course, the drones were used, robots were used to put out fires. There were robots to report and using thermal cameras to show images to the control center. There was 5G technology that was set up at the scene, so there was a specific and dedicated network that was used by the participants in the pilot, by the first responders, so that they would not rely on public infrastructure about their communication.
Yasonos, I'm sorry to interrupt. We're right out of time. We're overrunning. But we'll no doubt perhaps talk about that after that event takes place at the end of April. And let's hope that the police and all the people who were taking part in yesterday's conference do come up with solutions to make our working lives safer.
You're invited to take part to the final conference in April. We would love to see you there.
Okay, that is Yasonos Senekis from the Centre of Excellence in Risk and Decision Sciences. Thanks for joining me. Well, that about wraps up this edition of the Cyprus News Digest. Many thanks for your company. Hope you'll join me next week. Till we meet again, take care and God bless. Bye-bye now.